Okay, so first, we're going to analyze the assignment. We have to calculate ventilation loads on all the floors. Well, we can assume that the basement and the first floor, they come together. Okay, so we have the same owner for the basement and the first floor, and then we have different owners for the second and for the third floor. So first thing we have to do is to calculate how many people we have here. Okay, so if I have here 5 people, 10 people, and 3 and 1. Okay, but that depends on your ID. This is what we're going to do. So we have 4 people on the basement and first floor, 10 people on the second floor, 5 people on the third floor. And the conditions, we have 72 Fahrenheit and 50% relative humidity indoors and outdoors. We measure the temperature and relative humidity outdoors, and we have 70% relative humidity, 20 Fahrenheit. What is the first thing we have to do on the Excel file? We have to include more at the beginning. Remember that we had location, we have indoor and outdoor temperatures. Now we need indoor relative humidity and outdoor relative humidity. Okay, and what are the units of relative humidity? It's always percentage. So indoor, it's 50%. Outdoors, it was 70%. Okay, so those are new values that we have to include today because we have to use the relative humidity to calculate what? We have to calculate the wet bulb temperature indoors and wet bulb temperature outdoors. Okay, so now we have to use the psychrometric chart to calculate the wet bulb temperature indoors and outdoors. And we are going to try to do the same thing using or calculating the enthalpy indoors and the enthalpy outdoors. Okay, so all these things are new, and we have to introduce the values. So this, the temperature and relative humidity are always data that we get from, well, indoor comfort. It's something that it's always the same. It's around 70 Fahrenheit, around 50% of relative humidity. The outdoor temperature and the outdoor relative humidity depends on where we are. We haven't explained that yet, but those values of 20 Fahrenheit or relative humidity, that comes from, again, it comes from the ASHRAE. So the ASHRAE, depending on where we are, ASHRAE has a list with all the weather stations that we have in the United States. So depending on where we are, we have to take the data from that weather station, and this is the value that we have to get. Okay, so it's not always 20, and it's not always 70%. So we have to do this with the values that ASHRAE has from every location in the United States. I will show you this later, but so far, to make it simple, we're going to use 20 and 70. Okay, and then how can we get the wet bulb temperature? So if we want to get the wet bulb temperature, we have to open this psychrometric chart online. And we have to use this one, the online interactive psychrometric chart, like Arthur. Okay, so this probably there are others, but I know how this works, and it works quite well. So here by default, remember that we have international units, Celsius, pascals for pressure, kilograms or kilojoules for energy, kilograms for mass. Okay, so we have international units. The first thing we have to do is to change the settings, and then we have to click imperial units. If we click imperial units and we just click submit, we have this. We have a chart that it's not nice. Okay, so we have imperial units or English units, but so we have to reset all inputs, okay, because we reset the inputs and submit again. Now we have the right chart and we can see things clearly. And here we have the units. Okay, so remember that we have to click on settings. If we click on settings, we have to select English units. Then we have to reset all inputs, and finally we have to submit. And if we do this, we have the chart with all these values. Something we can do, or for the report, for the presentation, you can use this chart and you can copy and paste this chart so that I understand that you're not making the figures up. Okay, okay, so let's do it. First, we have to calculate indoor conditions. So the dry bulb temperature indoors, it's 72. The relative humidity, it's 50. Yeah, so the relative humidity is 50. Here you have to click this input data for air properties. So just by typing here the dry bulb temperature and relative humidity, then we click submit. And here we should have the wet bulb temperature, which is 60 Fahrenheit. Okay, so what we can do now is to type here the indoor wet bulb temperature is 60. And in the report, you can copy this chart. Copy. We can copy this. And here we can create the first slide is the indoor conditions. So probably you can type this here, ventilation loads. This is indoor conditions. So here we have the point. This is 70 Fahrenheit, 50% relative humidity. So we have fixed the point here, and here we have the values. What we are looking for now is the wet bulb temperature. We are looking for the enthalpy too. So we have to scroll down, and the enthalpy is here. The enthalpy is 26.46 BTU per pounds. Okay, so we have to type here indoor enthalpy, it's 26.46, and the units are important now. The units are BTU per pound. So the same units for the outdoor enthalpy. BTU per pound. Okay, so all these values come from the psychrometric chart. So if there's a way to get no, that won't save it. Okay, there's a way that we can get all the values, including the enthalpy. Yeah, I think that's better. So we'll paste it here again. Okay, here we have the wet bulb temperature 60, the enthalpy 26.46. So those are indoor conditions. And now I have to copy this, another slide, and we need the same, but with the outdoor conditions. I delete this chart and I have to go to the psychrometric chart. What are the outdoor conditions? 20 Fahrenheit, outdoor temperature, 70 is the relative humidity. Yeah, 70 is the relative humidity. Click here, input data, submit. And here we have the wet bulb temperature and the enthalpy. So the wet bulb temperature is 17.8. The outdoor wet bulb temperature is 17.8. And the enthalpy is 6.42. Okay. Now I take a screenshot from this, including the enthalpy, and paste it. Okay, so here we have outdoor conditions 20 and 70, wet bulb temperature, and enthalpy here. So that's the first thing we need. We have to type here, we have to extend the data, and we can do that. You can ask me, is there a way, it would be great if we just type 72 or if we just type the relative humidity and the temperature, is there a way to get, or can we apply a formula to get the wet bulb temperature and the enthalpy? There is. So if we want to get the calculation of wet bulb temperature from relative humidity, there is a formula. This is it. So the wet bulb temperature is the dry bulb temperature, R tangent 0.152 RH. I don't know. No, it's not 1H. This is a symbol. I think this is humidity rate. And we have another R tangent, the temperature plus this plus R tangent. Okay, so it's a quite simple formula. No, it's not simple. Okay, but there is a way to do it. The only thing we can do that in Excel. So but this is what this simulator does. Okay, so the interactive online. There are people that have included this. This is an Excel file, probably a little fancy, but probably this is an Excel file. And here we have just the formula. So if we want to calculate the wet bulb temperature as a function of the dry bulb temperature and the relative humidity, and that's the formula that we have to include. The problem is that those formulas are complicated. Well, we have it. We only have to copy. And well, this is not okay. So this is RH. So this is the relative humidity. It's not the humidity ratio. Sorry, this is the relative humidity. Okay, so we have the wet bulb temperature as a function of the dry bulb temperature and the relative humidity. So if we apply this formula, we can get this here. Okay, so just in this cell, I type this formula with indoor temperature and indoor relative humidity, and we should be having this. And the same thing for the enthalpy. So I'm sure that there's a calculation of enthalpy from relative humidity. And well, yes, so here we have the temperature in 9 steps. So I think the enthalpy, it's even more complicated than that, but we can do it. Okay, so we have different formulas here, and then we develop the formula, and we keep going, and So at the end, depending on the temperature and the relative humidity, we can calculate the enthalpy as well. So everything is related. The good thing is that we don't need to know how this works, because there have been people before that have already done it. But this is how science works. Okay, so once someone has done this and it's open, it's free, we can use it. We don't have to spend hours or days or years thinking of how to do this, how to create a formula. No, it's already there. So we can use it and then we can move on. Okay, so we can do something else based on this. So I don't recommend you do this here. If we have access to the internet, we can type here indoor temperature, indoor relative humidity, and we have the rest of the values, and then we only get these values and we type this on this Excel file. So someone, maybe, if you post your Excel file because you feel proud of it and you post it on the internet, probably someone will use your Excel file to calculate things, and then someone will build up something even better from your Excel file. So this is how this works. Anyway, we're using this tool. It's quite easy because we only have to type, we only have to calculate, and we have all the results there. And we get what we need now. We need the wet bulb temperature, and we need the indoor and outdoor enthalpy. Okay, so we have all this data, and now what do we have to do? Just follow the formula. So we have ventilation loads, and we are doing this. We're going to do this to check if we can calculate this with a sensible and latent heat. This is the official way that comes from ASHRAE. Okay, so we want to make sure that we are doing it correctly. We have to calculate this formula, but we will try to calculate also the same thing using the enthalpy to see if the results are the same. They should be the same. But that's the official formulas that we have to calculate. And we have to do this on the basement, on the first floor, and the second floor. So let's do it. I'm going to copy this formula here. Well, first, this is going to be the first floor and basement. So those are the formulas. The sensible heat and the latent heat. Okay, so sensible heat, Q, S. This 1.1, it's always the same. Then it depends on the CFM. So what's the CFM? We always have 20 CFM. Here we have to type per person. Okay, so how many people do we have in the basement and the first floor? In this case, 4 people. Your number of people will be different. Okay, so this is 20 CFM per person times 4, because we are in the first floor in the basement. And then times indoor minus outdoor temperature. So indoor temperature is 72, outdoor temperature is 20. Okay. So we only have to include this formula into the, and what are the units, by the way, here. This is, here we will get BTU hours. Okay, the units of the sensible heat or the latent heat is always BTU hour. So how do we go from, because this is Fahrenheit, this is CFM, cubic feet per minute. So this 1.1 is the factor that turns CFM temperature into BTU per hour. So that's the specific heat of the air in these units, and yes, Robert, I took your attendance, but don't worry. Okay, so this 1.1, it's a specific heat, and we need this value to turn this cubic feet per minute and the Fahrenheit into BTU per hour. Okay, but that's the formula that we have to include here. Okay, so let's do it. So that sensible heat should be on this column. Okay, so I'm going to use this, and at the end, the sensible heat for the basement, the first floor, it has to be here. So how can we do it? Well, this is just thinking about, we have the Excel file, and now we are thinking like software engineers. Okay, so how do I place the formula? Because at the end, I want to have here the sensible and the latent heat from the first floor, the second floor, and the third floor. Okay. So, and here we have this data because we're going to use the indoor temperature minus outdoor temperature. Okay, so it's there. But at the same, we need more data here. Okay, so here we can have, if we have sensible heat loads. Okay, this sensible heat load we have a basement, and we have first floor, and we have the second floor. Okay, so I'm going to place this like here. So first we have the space. Here we have the number of people. And with the space and number of people, and probably here we can have the CFM per person. And here I can have the total CFM. Okay, so this is what we need for ventilation. First, the space. So we have the space, it's a basement and the first floor. Then number of people. Number of people, in this case, I have 4 people. 4. CFM per person, it's always 20. And the total CFM, I have to multiply this times this. Okay. And finally, what is the sensible heat load? The sensible heat load is 1.1 times the total CFM of that space times, and now I have to type here indoor minus outdoor temperature. So what's the indoor temperature? This one by times this one minus outdoor temperature. But I'm going to drag it down because I'm going to do this for the basement, for the first floor, for the second floor, whatever. So if I want to make sure that this is working, when I drag it, I have to type here dollar and dollar, dollar and dollar. Okay, so those are the heat, the sensible heat loads, the units, BTU per hour. So that's the sensible heat load of the basement and first floor. Here, if we have the second floor, again, what's number of people of the second floor? It's in this case 10. What's the CFM Well, I don't drag this down because we might have different uses. Okay, imagine that on the second floor we have a smoking lounge or a smoking bar or whatever. Then I have to increase this number. Okay, so in a building I can have different areas with different CFMs. But anyway, in this case we always have 20, but we might change this. But the total CFM, I can drag it down because it's always the number of people times the CFM that I have here. And then the sensible load, if I do this, it works because it takes the total CFM and I have written the dollar. So it's taking the indoor minus outdoor temperature. And the units are always BTU. And what's the third floor? The third floor, it's the number of people, 5. CFM per person, 20. And now I can select everything, drag it down, and I have the same values there. Okay, so that's the sensible heat load. But why this figure is not here? Because for the same space, I have to calculate also the latent heat load. So the latent heat load, the formula is different. So for the latent heat load, we have 0.68 times the CFM. So the CFM are the same. And this is wet bulb temperature, indoor wet bulb temperature minus outdoor wet bulb temperature. So the formula is different. The CFM is the same. The space is the same, but the formula for the latent heat is different. And okay, so I can come here and I can calculate here the latent heat load. Like this. So what's the formula for that? We have the same space and the same people, so we have the same CFM. So latent heat load here, I need another formula. It's 0.68 times the same CFM, total CFM that I have here, times, and now here I have to type indoor wet bulb temperature, which is this, minus outdoor wet bulb temperature. I type dollar and dollar. And this is the latent load, and I have to copy because the units are the same. And now I can drag this down. There you go. So let's check. If I click here, I'm taking the total CFM. That's correct. And make sure that we are taking wet bulb indoors minus wet bulb outdoors. Okay, so this is it. And now I have to add everything up. So that's what I'm going to highlight this with the green color, because that's the total ventilation load. So the total ventilation load, I have to add up all the sensible heat plus all the latent heat. So I can, yes.
I'm sorry, was the formula times the total CFM?
This one.
Yes.
It's 0.68 times the total CFM times indoor wet bulb minus outdoor wet bulb.
Thank you.
If I'm not wrong, yeah, it's 0.68 CFM indoor minus outdoor. So now I have to add everything up here. I think it would be even nicer if I insert a new layer here. So here I can have the total sensible, and here I can have the total latent. So the total sensible here is I have to sum all this, and the total, I just copy this. Okay, I copy this here. This is the sum of all. And don't forget the units. The units are always BTU. If this is the total, I highlight it. We have total sensible, the total latent, and what's the total ventilation load? It's just this plus that. There you go. So here we have 32. 32,000. Okay. So now things have changed. Okay, so let's summarize this. What is the thermal loads through the wall? Walls is around 6,000. And it's always BTU power through the roof. The roof, it was around 1,300 BTU per hour. And then we have windows. It was around 17,000 BTU per hour. The door, it was around 1,000 BTU per hour. The basement, it was 3,000, or yeah, almost 4,000. BTU hour. And now we have a surprise here. We have a ventilation load. So the total ventilation load is 32,000. Per hour. Okay, so when we were happy and we thought that the window was the worst, and now we have this nice surprise that the ventilation load is the highest by far. Okay, so it's much higher than the loads that we have through the windows. Okay, and this is a small building. It's not a single family house because it's a residential building. But well, the occupancy, we have 10 people here, 5 people there. And the more the occupancy, so if you have different numbers, probably this number will be much higher. Okay, because I have taken this with 2 zeros. But if you have different numbers here, this ventilation load would be much higher. Okay, so now I have changed my mind. I told you last week that the first thing I have to do in this building is to change the window. By looking at this, the first thing I have to do is to place a heat recovery. Okay, so I have changed my mind. Owner, no, I told you last week that we had to change the window. No. At first, let's place a heat recovery. And yeah, the problem with the heat recovery is now we have to create a ductwork. So we need ducts to go from the heat recovery to all the rooms that we have in this building. Okay, so probably the heat recovery itself, maybe it's this heat recovery that we have there. So we would use this for each plan, each floor plan. We would use one of those, and maybe it's $2,000 each. Not a big deal. The problem is that we have to create the ducts, and now yeah, I have to work because this is my job. I'm the architect, and I have to figure out how to place all these ducts there. The good news is that it's a residential building, so we won't have ducts as big as these ones. But the bad news is that I have to figure out how to do it. So in terms of architecture, in terms of heating loads or building science, we have already done it. Okay, so this is it. Okay, so no. And I'm almost done with the calculations. So I know how to do it through the walls, roofs, windows and doors. I know how to calculate the thermal loads in the basement. And now I have the ventilation loads. But that's not enough. I am the client, I see the numbers. Oh, yes, you are right. We have to do something with the ventilation loads. The first measure, ventilation loads. The second, replace the windows. And third, we can wrap the house with more thermal insulation. And that will, then we will have a perfect house in terms, but first is to address the ventilation loads. So how can we do this? Well, with this, if we apply a heat recovery, I'm going to insert another layer here. And probably in this layer, I have to somehow take into account the heat recovery. So here I can have the heat recovery. Efficiency. And here there's the heat recovery efficiency. It's always a percentage. So that comes from the specifications. Okay, so it's we don't have to calculate anything here. We have to ask the heat recovery supplier. And okay, I have these conditions. This is the outdoor temperature. This is the indoor temperature, the outdoor relative humidity, the indoor relative humidity. What do you recommend? And this is the airflow. Another important thing for heat recoveries is the airflow, the total CFM that we have here. What would you recommend? Okay, so based on this building in this area, with this temperature, with this occupancy, with this airflow, I recommend you this. And this has an efficiency of 60%. Okay, so we just type here 60%. And now this total ventilation load will be, we have to reduce this by 60%. So we recover 60% of that energy. So how can we do that? So the total heating load will be this minus the energy that I can recover. And if we have a 60% of efficiency, that means that I'm recovering 60% of that. So at the end, we are going to, I think we can do this. If I change this formula, so this is the total sensible and heating loads, and I have to subtract this minus the efficiency, and the efficiency is this divided by 100. Okay, because 60% efficiency, it's like multiplying this times 0.6. So this is the effect of the heat recovery, 60% times the total. So I can type this again. times sensible plus latent heat. And do I have to close this again? Yes. Thing here. Okay, so that's my ventilation load now. Okay, if I recover 60% of the energy, what's the total? The original one minus 60% of that energy. Can I do it in a different way? Yes, probably. So let me try another formula here. So that one will be so basically, if I recover 60%, that means that I spend 40%. Okay, so this is 1 minus the recovery percentage divided by 100 times the total sensible plus total latent load, and the result is the same. It's 13,000. Okay, so which formula do you like the most? I think the second one is easier. Okay, so I'm going to write it down on the PowerPoint to understand what we are doing. Okay, so we ended up so the total. So here we have the basement. Then we have the second floor and the third floor. And finally, okay, so here we have the sensible heat and latent heat. So for the first floor plus basement, the number is this one. It's 4576, the sensible. This 4576 76. This is the sensible load. The latent load is 2295. Okay, so this is the sensible load for the basement, the latent load for the basement. For the second floor, QS is 11440 and QL is 5739. And for the third floor, the sensible load is 5720. And latent is 2869. Okay. So now what's the total? The total is this without the heat recovery. So I'm going to do this. So total without the heat recovery is 32,640 BTU hour. Okay, so we have the first floor and the basement, the second floor, and the third floor. We have sensible and latent for the first, the second, and the third floor. I add everything up, and that's the total without the heat recovery. Okay, so that's the summary of everything. Now, if we add the heat recovery, so with the heat recovery, I have to subtract the value 32,640 minus 60%, 0.6 times 32,640. Okay, so this is what I have done in the formula. I have subtracted the original value minus 60% of that original value. But this is the same as the original value times 40%. Okay, so that's what I did in the second cell. Okay, so I just applied 1 minus the efficiency times the total load. Well, I think this formula is shorter than the other one. Okay, but how do I type this in Revit, in Excel language? So the Excel language is 1 minus 60 divided by 100, and 1 minus 60 divided by 100 is 0.4 times the total ventilation load without the heat recovery. Okay, so basically we have to understand how Excel fits, and I need to understand what I will do. And then I have to turn this formula into the Excel language. So the Excel language is that one. And this value is the total load, latent plus sensible. And then this is 40%. So if the efficiency is 60, I recover 60%. So what is my, what am I wasting? I'm wasting 40%. If I recover 60, I'm wasting 40. So 40 is 1 minus 60. Okay, but that's okay. This is Excel, and this is what I'm doing. I'm recovering 60. So my what I have to consume is 40. So 40 is 1 minus 60. So this is how Excel works. Okay, so with this formula here, and now the good thing of this Excel file is that now I have another, because I find out that there's another heat recovery I did with another company, and there's another heat recovery with an efficiency of 70%. So let's type here 70%. And this number is lower. Now it's 9,000. It's not 13,000. What if I have more people? How many people on the basement? Now I have 10 people. Okay, I have 10 people in the basement. Oh, that increases. And now I have it's not an option. The company that have this heat recovery 70% efficiency has gone down the drain, and now I have to go back to the other one. Okay, so let's 60% efficiency. So now you have everything here. So by changing the number of people or the indoor and outdoor conditions, okay, so it's not 72. Now I need 70, or it's not 20, it's 25. So just by changing those parameters, I see how everything changes accordingly. And I have this extra thing, which is the heat recovery efficiency. But for us, this heat recovery efficiency is just a number. That's there's nothing we can do with the heat recovery efficiency. It's just a number. So we have to deal with the company and the heat recovery supplier, and they have to let us know, or they have to give us these numbers. But this number depends on location, it depends on the outdoor conditions, it depends on the number of people, and well, basically that's it. It depends on the location and it depends on the number of people. So this 60% is not always 60. Probably with the same heat recovery in a different location, that number can be 70 or that number can be 50 with the same heat recovery. So because that depends on the outdoor conditions that we have and the number of people that we have in the building. Okay, but now we have everything. We can break down the building into different spaces. Imagine that it's not the first floor, second floor. In this building, we will have classroom 110, the wood shop, the computer lab, the classroom, the chemistry lab here. So I can break down this into different rooms or spaces. Each space, I know the number of people each space. The CFM per person in this building, for example, we would have 20 for classroom, but probably for the chemistry lab or the wood shop, this number would be 30 or 35. So that makes sense having this breaking down the spaces, because the occupancy is different and the attendance can be different. If we have residential buildings, you can take 20 for everything, and that's fine. We have the total CFM, we calculate the sensible heat, the latent heat, and then the heat recovery efficiency. So everything is there. And now if we have another floor, we only have, again, we have to insert another layer, and we have a second floor or another space, a second floor, I don't know, a theater, because there's a theater on that second floor. On the theater, we have like 500 people. And if we have 500 people here, we only, the CFM, it's, let's say in a theater, it can be 25, because the demand for fresh air is higher. Then we do all this. Right? And now this has raised to 446,000, even with the efficiency. What if we don't have a heat recovery? If we don't have a heat recovery, we can type here 0. So we don't have any efficiency. So that means that we don't have any heat recovery. And that number is 1 million BTU hour. Okay, so ventilation loads are terrible when we have a lot of people. So when we have hundreds of people in a room, the ventilation load is it's incredible. Okay, so we tend to think, no, I think that the envelope matters more than ventilation. It's not like this, especially in commercial buildings. In this building, most of the heat loads comes from ventilation, because we need to renew the air. We have a lot of people in this classroom, in the workshop, in the chemistry lab, in the studio. And if we have all these people at the same time in the building, then the ventilation load would be much bigger than the heat that we are losing through windows, the heat that we are losing through the roof, or through the. So that's why the heat recovery is something mandatory, especially in commercial buildings. In residential buildings, we don't have 500 people here. Okay, so we can delete this. And well, without the heat recovery, this is the highest number. If we have a 50% efficient heat recovery, which is something quite easy, we reduce this by half, and now windows and ventilation loads are balanced. So what's the goal? We have to increase as much as possible the efficiency of this heat recovery, and that's all we can do. Okay, so there's nothing we can do, because the other thing is to get rid of people. But we can't do that. If we need 30 people for the students in this classroom, we need 30 students in this classroom. Okay, we need 50 students in, or 50 people in the computer lab. We need so we can get rid of people. The only thing we can do is to increase the efficiency of the heat recovery. And this is not architecture. This is engineering. It's like so there is nothing we can do from the architectural point of view, from the design point of view, to improve the efficiency of those heat recoveries. Okay, so basically, everything related to walls, roofs, windows, doors, basement, this is architecture. The ventilation load is the equipment. Okay, so here, that depends on the equipment. But all this depends on the architectural project. Okay, because that depends on the building itself, the design of the building, the amount of thermal insulation that we have, the orientation of the windows, the insulation that we put in the basement. So everything depends on us, everything that is related to these heating loads. But when it comes to ventilation loads, the only thing we can do is to select the right equipment for our building. Okay, so this is it. If you have done this with your Excel file, and now this is what you have to do for this assignment. You have to include everything again. You have to include the heating loads to the walls, the roof, the details. So everything we have done so far. But now you have to add these slides. I will do something more professional for this. Okay. But I need to know what the occupancy of different floors in your building. I need to see that you have taken the enthalpy and the wet bulb temperature from an official, that you have created these slides with the psychrometric chart, and then I can see that you have taken the right temperature, relative humidity, and you have the right wet bulb temperature here. And now we need those calculations. So you can copy and paste the values from this, but I need to know the sensible and latent heat from the first, the second, the third floor, and I need to know the total. The heat recovery efficiency. Okay, so you can include this, and we just can type this number. We can change this number anytime we do this, and we have to.